Hi there. So the other day I put on my TikTok story asking anyone and asking people to ask me a question, seek my opinion on anything that they would want. And I received a very interesting question from a wonderful young lady. And her question was, can someone marry a divorced person? It's up here. That's the question. It's up here. Can someone marry a divorced person? And I want to try and respond. It's a very interesting question, not uh, very, very easy to respond, but I'm going to give my opinion. And since I'm a Christian, my answer is going to be Christian based, Bible based. I'm going to reference the Word of God because that is what I know. And it may not be popular, but that is what, or that is where I will reference my response from. I cannot talk from any other. I'm not a lawyer, so I cannot talk from that perspective. I can only talk from a Christian, Bible based perspective, what the Word of God says. And you're free to leave a comment, you're free to give your own opinion. And yeah, this is a safe place. Just feel free to give your own opinion. I will give a Bible based response, and hopefully it will settle in well with the person who asked and with anybody else. But you're always you can I mean you can seek further clarification from your pastors, if you're a Christian. That's what I'll say. You can seek further clarification from your pastors and or from a counselor. But if the counselor is a Christian, they'll talk from a Christian perspective. I'm not here to judge anybody. I am not the judge of the living, neither of the dead. So this is my opinion, and I've said since I am a Christian, I will give my response based on the Word of God. And I will start from Matthew. I got very, very interesting statements here. Matthew chapter 19, verse 9. Let's just say verse 8. Jesus replied, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard, but it was not this way from the beginning. Verse 9, it says, I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. And we know in our current situation, we have different grounds for divorce. We have toxic relationships, we have violence, domestic violence in marriages. Um, we have narcissistic tendencies and behaviors that drive people to almost lose their minds. And so, other than sexual immorality, there are other grounds for divorce, neglect, there are other grounds for divorce in our current situation. So, still, the Word of God says, except for sexual immorality and marries another woman, commits adultery. And then, if you go to First Corinthians, I got something very, very interesting. Just a minute. Chapter 7, verse 10, it says, to the married, I give you this command. Not I, but the Lord. This is Paul talking, that to the married, this is the command he is giving. A wife must not separate from her husband. Verse 11, but if she does, she must remain unmarried. If she does separate from her husband, she must remain unmarried or else be reconciled to her husband. And a husband must not divorce his wife. Then he says, to the rest, I say this now. He says, I am not the Lord. If any brother has a wife who is not a believer and she's willing to live with him, he must not divorce her. And if a woman has a husband who is not a believer and he is willing to live with her, she must not divorce him. For the unbelieving husband has been sanctified through his wife, and the unbelieving wife has been sanctified through her believing husband. Otherwise, your children will be unclean, but as it is, they are holy. But if, this is the disclaimer, if the unbeliever leaves, if the unbeliever's spouse leaves, let it be so. The brother or the sister is not bound in such circumstances. You're not bound if the unbeliever decides to leave, not because of your cruelty. This is not a leeway to find ways to make them leave, because God sees. He sees and He knows the state of our hearts. He looks more deep inside us. He knows our motives. He knows our motives more than what our words say. So it says that God has called us to live in peace. And while you are thinking about what we have just read, there is also a very, very interesting verse here from Matthew chapter 5, verse 31. It says, "It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce." Verse 32, "But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, makes her the victim of adultery." Now, this is the hammer. "And anyone who marries a divorced woman commits adultery." And anyone who marries a divorced woman, I think it's also vice versa, also a divorced man commits adultery. I will leave it there. What do you think from what we have read? Because I know God is not saying that divorce is a sin. It's not a sin. It is the remarrying that God has His own way of how a Christian should carry themselves after the divorce. Let's go. There's also another very interesting verse that I found. Very, very interesting. Let me find it and read it to us. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 39. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 39. This is what it says. "A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone she wishes, but he must belong to the Lord." A woman is bound to her husband as long as he lives. But if her husband dies, she is free to marry anyone that she wishes. And if you're a Christian, it says, but he must belong to the Lord. He must belong to the Lord. So I'm gonna stop there and get your feedback. What do you think? I've read the Word of God, which is my to-go-to book, which is my manual for life. If I'm doing life, it is through the Word of God and what the Word of God says. So from what we have read, what is your opinion? Are you confused? Are you more confused? Is it clear? Do you know how to go about it? Or do you want to seek more clarification? I'm going to leave it there and wait for your comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Write down on the comment section. Let me know what you think.